just a second for give people a chance to get settled. So the purpose of this panel is to put an industry sector perspective on the GR.E.A.T platform and how it can be used. I think we all throughout need to be thinking about these designed opportunities. We need to generate ideas today. That's been my interest in being here and certainly in moderating this panel. So I want to point out that if you look at everyone except me, perhaps, but even I do this in my job. I don't really have a job description, so I can do pretty much whatever I want to. Don't tell my provost that. But everybody on this panel is a connector. If you think about what they do on a daily basis, they are charged with connecting people, talent. They're charged with connecting industry, and they are charged with connecting academia as well. And so we're going to go through and do introductions very briefly. First, I'll introduce myself, and then each panelist will do that. I'm going to provide a little bit of an overview, of a very high-level overview of higher education in the aerospace industry sector, both in Quebec, as far as I know it, and also in Ohio, which I know a bit more about. So, I am Denis Irwin. I am Dean of the Rusk College of Engineering and Technology. I've been doing that since 2002, and that's at Ohio University. This is not my place of business. My place of business is normally either in Athens or in Beaver Creek, Ohio, but I'm happy that the college deans are allowing us to use their facility here.
My name is Denis Faubert. I am the CEO of a consortium called, it's a bit complicated, it's a consortium for research and innovation for aerospace in Quebec. It's called JobsOhio. And this being said, there's another one of these consortiums that is operating across Canada. So I'm the CEO, so we're interested in collaborative R&D projects in aerospace. I guess we're going to describe it a little bit later.
I'm Denis Andersh from Wright State University. I actually run the Wright State Research Institute, which is very similar to Georgia Tech's Research Institute. It's set up, and our focus is in healthcare and performance. But what I'm also doing is Marty Kress and I are the lead for the state for the Ohio Federal Research Network, and I'll talk a little bit about that today. So.
Yes, my name is Richardson, and I'm the Managing Director for Advanced Manufacturing and Aerospace for JobsOhio. JobsOhio is a private nonprofit organization that was set up by Governor Denis to be responsible for economic development in the state of Ohio. And our charter is fundamentally to drive economic growth and job creation, working with businesses that are currently in Ohio to grow and expand, and also to work with those outside of Ohio and outside of the United States to come to Ohio and enjoy all the benefits of this great state.
Good morning, my name is Jeff Rolf. I am the new guy, president at Ohio Aerospace Institute since about 4 months. Before that, I was at Parker Aerospace for 35 years. At OAI, what we do is that's Ohio Aerospace Institute. We do things to promote education in aerospace technologies. We do things to promote research in aerospace. And the third thing we do is we try to bring industry, federal institutions, and education together in a connected manner.
Good morning, my name is Marquis. I'm the Quebec government representative to the Midwest. Our mandate is to strengthen business and political and institutional ties between Quebec and 12 Midwestern states, especially Ohio. My colleague Leslie Westfall, please stand up, Leslie, is the trade officer responsible for aerospace and advanced manufacturing and all sorts of sectors that are key to the Quebec-Ohio relationship, so feel free to interface with her as well. I've been at it here in Ohio for the last 5 years, working with all sorts of partners. It's been a great relationship. And to show the level, when we said we're committed and very against all circumstances, you can say that for the last 35 years I've been a sometimes long-suffering Browns fan. So
Sometimes.
in the best of times and the worst of times, I guess this year would be another category of something.
Well, all I can say to that, Eric, and thank you all, is go Indians. I happen to know that your colleague is a Cubs fan, so. So again, we want to all be thinking about how we can make connections through designed opportunities as we sit and talk about our own particular sector. So let me get started by laying some groundwork in the sector that I'm in, which is academia. And I've tried to do a little bit of a comparison. Some of the information is not quite as transparent to me for cultural reasons, probably in Quebec. So those of you from Quebec can correct me if I'm wrong. But what I found is that Ohio has 5 aerospace engineering programs. Interestingly, they're all in the top 50 such programs in the United States. My own institution has one of the few research and academic programs in the very specific area of avionics engineering. Quebec has 6 aerospace engineering programs, and I'm not really aware of the internal rankings if there are any, but I personally know that several of them are the same quality as some of those in Ohio, having personal experience. So if you look at the aerospace and defense industry, so I'm looking at direct employment here. This would be people who are employed by companies whose names you would recognize as being associated with the aerospace industry, say Lockheed Martin or whatever. Ohio doesn't rank as highly as we would like. We hold roughly the 11th place in the number of direct employment jobs in aerospace and defense. But there's a little twist here. The state ranks 2nd in the U.S. in the overall aerospace supply chain. And what that means is that we build the things that people use to build airplanes and other aerospace and defense hardware. And we're also evidently the #1 supplier state, not province, so I don't want to steal anyone's thunder, to both Boeing and Airbus. Quebec has roughly the same number of direct employment jobs as Ohio. It's about 40,000 in each case. And that's not bad. It's not a large percentage of either one of our employment pictures, or as large as I think we would like. So not too bad, but do consider this. There's some real strengths. The Canadian Space Agency is headquartered in Montreal. The International Air Transport Association is headquartered in Montreal. The International Civil Aviation Organization is based in Montreal. I've been in the aerospace industry for quite some time, and trained as an electrical engineer, and then they made me an aerospace engineer. I don't know why that happened, but I hope I didn't make any mistakes. And I've been to all of these organizations in Montreal throughout my career. I mean, these are places that the work is actually done. On our side of the border, the U.S. Air Force Research Labs are headquartered in Dayton, Ohio. That's almost certainly the largest research organization in our sector of the world, probably in any sector. The NASA Glenn Research Center, a major research center in aeronautical research, is based in Cleveland, Ohio. And GE Aviation Corporation is headquartered near Cincinnati, Ohio. So I think we can do better, actually. We have a lot of strengths that are governmental, that are industry-based and academically based. And I honestly don't think we're taking advantage of them the way that we should. I think we're compartmentalizing ourselves. And I don't think we're actually providing. I think that ultimately, from my point of view as an academic, that does not serve our students well, and that probably means that it doesn't serve our economy well as well. So again, I think the GR.E.A.T platform is a real opportunity. I think the idea, the political support for me educating foreign students simply because we want them to work in Ohio is a pretty unique idea for a politician in Ohio or in the Midwest, believe me. So this is an opportunity we shouldn't forsake, and we should move ahead with it full speed ahead. Again, think about designed opportunities. And at this point, I'm going to start asking some leading questions of our panelists. But we've all agreed to keep this relatively short because what we want to do is we want to answer questions from the group here. So I'll start with Eric Marquis. Eric, what benefit does Quebec anticipate under the GR.E.A.T initiative? And why would we start with aerospace as the industry sector?
Well, let me begin first with some complimentary comments of what you were saying with respect to the aerospace sector. Montreal, I think, is the third largest hub in the world for aerospace. So that gives you a sense of the critical mass that is achieved, both from a manufacturing standpoint or from a research and innovation standpoint as well. So I think that's why I think if you want a short and simple answer, that's a good starting point. Being a government guy, I'll make it lengthier and more complicated. So how did we get into
Several
this?
of us are in that boat.
So how did we get into this? I think when we talk about international academic outreach, a lot of it clearly falls under the direct review of institutions, universities, colleges, research institutes. But I think it has become an increasingly important matter for governments as well. And one of the key, I guess the general reason for that is a matter of competitiveness. If we look at our region, we see that there's a great dynamic, great momentum towards, yes, economic integration, but also concerted action by governments and stakeholders. And the issue of competitiveness is very much behind that. For many key sectors of our economy, we know how the center of gravity of the world economy is moving. There's lots of competition that's coming from elsewhere. A lot of the growing markets are not necessarily North America anymore, but in other, especially the emerging economies. And to enhance competitiveness, we need and we have built these cross-border value chains in some sectors and developing them in others. So we're kind of, innovation is very key to that, as we have to move from a paradigm of outright competition to one that's more geared towards cross-border collaboration. And for that, we need to build partnerships. And sometimes the temptation is to go on kind of a fishing expedition and sign as many agreements as possible. It's a good display of international visibility. I think at some point you try to find partners with whom you have a lot in common and where there's a nice convergence of interests and I would say expertise. And in that respect, Quebec, Ohio is a very good model because we have a very strong economic relationship. We trade more with Ohio, we export more to Ohio than we export to Europe. So just to give you a sense of how important it is, and Ohio exports a lot to Canada. So there's this level of integration, compatible sector of excellence. There's a lot of stakeholder commitment, private sector and research as well. So there's really a really good model that's gotten started over the last few years. There's already investment going on, like trade clearly, investment with Quebec companies investing in Ohio, like in tech, for instance, but Ohio companies very much invested in Quebec as well. And there's also a framework of innovation that's being developed thanks to the agreement between OAI, inteG.R.E.A.T, and we'll definitely talk more about that. So there's trade, investment, innovation. I think a fourth pillar is that construct has to be talent. And that's where the GR.E.A.T initiative comes in, I think, or how we can develop a platform that will, with one of our key trading partners, with one of our key innovation partners, to have a talent pipeline that's going to be established that will focus on areas of shared excellence and where the impact is going to be greater. And in that regard, clearly aerospace is the starting point for things like advanced manufacturing and automotive would be advanced industrial material would be other sectors that we will definitely explore in the months and years to come.
You and I had a discussion at breakfast actually about the idea that it's not just bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, or PhDs. It's also, I think you actually mentioned to me the GEDs to PhDs concept. So
Yeah,
we are not very good at that, and I quizzed you a little bit, and you folks seem to be a little bit better.
Well, I think that the education system works, in Quebec works a little differently, but not too much so that it doesn't lend itself to collaboration. So we're this thing, but not, not in a bad way. So the system in Quebec, like for a bachelor's degree, instead of being 4 years, it's 3 years. And we do one less year of high school. So you take these 2 years together, you put them, there's an intermediate level of institutions that are called colleges, CEGEPs, as we call them in French, and they have both a pre-university track and a professional track that is focused on these technical degrees. Some of them are very general and offered throughout the province, like you were saying, and others, but others are very specialized in, for instance, aerospace is in Montreal. If you do something in mining, well, it's going to be in Sept-Îles and Abitibi and other places. So you've got this. And what's interesting about it is that, again, it provides the whole workforce requirement, and there's a lot of industry involvement in curriculum development as well. So that people that come out of these institutions are, ready to work and ready to, fly and land that plane, if I may use the expression.
But that's great. I think that's actually something that we can learn from you folks. I'd ask the audience to think about how that might be done under the model that we currently work with in Ohio. So, Jeff, can you just explain a little bit? You've done a little bit of this, but can you explain a little bit more about what OAI is and some of its history, and maybe talk about the current state of Ohio aerospace industry from your perspective?
Sure, thanks. Again, I will refer to the bulk of my aerospace experience being with industry, being with Parker Aerospace. 32 years before I joined OAI a few months ago. And to me, in Ohio Aerospace and our relationships with our friends up north was as a very specific example. Parker was a very big part of the C-Series in the flight controls and hydraulics and the fuel systems. And it's very interesting because each time someone comes out with a new jet, it disrupts technology. And I think the C-Series did that more than the others. The 737 and the A320, they're upgrading those airframes that are 30 or 40 years old. And here comes the C-Series. It's composites and it's, the flight control requirements that Parker held for the C-Series were just so innovative from what's been done. So the requirement for new technology, certification processes, and what that meant in fuel efficiency, ease of workload for the pilot, it's a tremendous thing. So I've always thought of our friends at Bombardier as kind of raising the level of the water and the technology. And now that I've moved over to OAI, what I'm seeing and actually amazed at is the availability of technology, whether it's AFRL or NASA Glenn or these university programs that are producing the kind of engineering graduates that are necessary to drive what's going to happen in things like the flight control series or composites engineering or what have you on aircraft like Bombardier is building. And I'm also being exposed through AI to some of the work that's being done in tomorrow's technologies, whether it's electric propulsion for the space agency or on hybrid electric aircraft. And the universities are participating in that, from Case, from U and Ohio State, and the work that AFRL is doing in sensing and the whole UAV market space. So what OAI is about, and we're in probably a little bit of a change. Many of you may have known Mike Heil, who retired here in June, and I came in. So anytime there's change, it's a time to refresh the vision with the stakeholders. And so what we're looking at, we've been hearing a lot of connecting state resources and getting them aligned. And several of the guys here have heard me talk about there's a black circle of what OU does, and there's a black circle of what FRN does, and there's a black circle of what, NASA does, and then all the industry. And my impression over the last few years, since I moved back from Toulouse about 10 years ago, is there's a lot of inefficiency in the state as we fight to try to take each other's black circles. And I think there's just so much white space in the middle of those black circles to provide connectedness. And that has been in OAI's charter, and I think we're going to take a fresh look at that to see how we can support the state, get people, we'll agree, we were all kids, we all competed at games in the backyard. And the competition for us is it's sucking a lot of our energy. And we want to see how we can cooperate in Ohio and with partners like those in Montreal or federal institutions, and really kind of raise the levels of water for everyone so that we can be first when it comes to the C-Series 2 or the next space vehicle. There's just so many assets here, and OAI is going to be part of getting those assets to work well together so we can be good partners of everything. So,
One thing I'm taking away from what you're saying, Jeff, is that the C-Series actually drove innovation at Parker in Ohio.
absolutely, it was in Parker. It was not just the flight controls. Another example was fuel. We did the fuel systems in Elyria, Ohio. We do wheels and brakes in Avon for all the Faubert aircraft. So it's yes, absolutely, we welcome that challenge, and people coming out of the universities are the ones that are going to have to do that work. So yeah, and OAI wants to be the connector, not just Parker, but SEA and Megan and all the other ones.
My institution's already connected with Parker, but we're not connected with a lot of other of the suppliers, the Bombardier and others as well. So a lot of work needs to be done. Denis, would you like to talk a little bit about C.R.E.A.T and C.R.E.A.T?
Thank you very much. So, as I said a bit earlier, C.R.E.A.T it's an industrial consortium, and its raison d'être is to assist industry with their innovation requirements, and we do that through collaborative R&D. So actually, what we're doing are our instruments. We are funding research projects in the TRL scale, roughly from 1 to 6, 2 to 6, but through collaborative R&D. And the C.R.E.A.T is the Quebec one, the one based in the province of Quebec, and it was created in 2012 with the explicit mandate of getting technologies out of university into the hands of industry to create value. So it was exactly what says the great acronym. It's engaging academic talent. And this is still our model. So collaborative research for us means that each and every one of our projects must have at least 4 partners. 2 from the research world, academia, could be either universities or what we call colleges or CEGEP, that was described by Eric, or federal research centers, and 2 industries or 2 companies. And the idea here is to create a relationship, of course, extract and do good innovation, and to create relationships. C.R.E.A.T has been around for almost, say, about 14 years. We funded over about 100 proposals, total worth of $100 million spent in university research to address industrial problems. Now came C.R.E.A.T. C.R.E.A.T is 2.5 years old. And essentially, C.R.E.A.T was very successful. I've been to C.R.E.A.T and C.R.E.A.T for only 2 years, so I take no credit for the beautiful models which were built in the past. So C.R.E.A.T was recognized as really a wonderful model. And so when the federal government, across the whole nation, looked at how we can best support the innovation requirements of the aerospace industry as a whole, said, why don't we just generalize, so to speak, the C.R.E.A.T model? So that's what we did. And both consortia are managed by us in Montreal. So my team and I, including myself, are split basically half and half there. And because, of course, we had such a good start with C.R.E.A.T, we hit the ground running. So in 2.5 years, we have already funded 40 projects for a value of around $50 million. But this time, the Québec money can go to universities, of course, but also to industry, and that's very important. It is my deepest conviction that a technology transfer is not completed until industry has the technology in its hands, so that its researchers or engineers can actually play with it. Because, you know, there's a big difference within technology in the laboratory with 10 PhDs and so many MSc students and everything, parameters are controlled, and the technology having to operate in the real world. So it's very, very interesting. So Québec, basically we achieved about half what Québec achieved in about 2.5 years. Very interesting. So we're aiming for three things, three outcomes. First one is innovation, adding impact, getting technologies out of university, getting the people together to develop actually novel technology and positioning our industry for success in competition. But the second one is creating a network, and this one is just as important. Again, it is my opinion that if you really want to compete in the global market, the worldwide market, you better collaborate. Nobody can do anything of any significance on its own anymore. So you need a network to do that, or if you have a very solid network, people that are interacting together, having worked together, they know each other, and it is much easier to promote collaboration. So for us, the second outcome is just as important as the first outcome. And of course, the other thing is that excellence, as you all know, ignores borders, right? There's absolutely no relevance to frontiers. So that's why our motto is research without borders, a bit like Médecins Sans Frontières there. So you see directly, and this is important for two reasons. Because first, the talent is available everywhere, so you want to work with the best, no matter where they are. But also, because especially with our model that is involved in industry, then you expose everybody to business opportunities on a global scale. So the second thing, the network thing. And the third one, it's training people. We don't have a special program for training. There are programs, and I think somebody mentioned that. You did. We have 5, I think, or 6, like Aerospace University Institute of some sort, offering special programs. But as a result of our work, we are training, especially masters and PhD, but also a few bachelor degrees. This looks like a byproduct of our activities, but actually this byproduct is as important as the three other components. So when we make our commitments to the people who are funding us, we are delivering to them the outcome on three fronts: the innovation, that is impact, a network, and that will be international, and talent to sustain the effort. And I think you asked a very interesting question. Why should we start great technologies? Why should we choose aerospace? There is indeed one good reason to start with aerospace. Aerospace is like defense. It taps on your entire technology base. Materials, ITC, even social sciences are important. So you name it. So if you sort of interact with the aerospace community, you reach out essentially to the entire community. So that's I guess you understand quite obviously why the GR.E.A.T initiative, or generally speaking, collaborating with Ohio is important to us, because it will help us to deliver a better project, have a better network, and we can train students hours and hours to make the whole thing sustainable. And I guess I should finish by go have go in my case.
Thank you. We'll be back to you. I have some questions to ask you. Might have to do it offline, but about funding mechanisms, because that's. I know Denis Andersh was over here with his eyes wide open about some of the size of some of those numbers. But Denis, now that I've mentioned you, why don't we go and talk about the Ohio Federal Research Network a little bit? Tell us a little bit about what that is and where it came from.
Thanks, Denis. So about 2.5 years ago, an effort started in the state of Ohio, given the fact that NASA Glenn and Wright-Patterson Air Force Base are fairly big assets in the state of Ohio, is how could the research universities and how could industry better connect with those assets across Ohio. And we came up with a model in the process of doing that. It's called the Ohio Federal Research Network. But what we did is we went into the laboratories, we went into NASA Glenn, Hawkins back there, Joe Shaw over here was our partner, to went in an asset line and said, where are you going to put your investment in the next 10 to 20 years? We did the same thing at the Air Force Research Laboratory. We also did that at the Naval Aerospace Medical Research Unit, which is new in Ohio, down at Dayton, in the National Air and Space Intelligence Center. And what we basically found are commonalities across each of those centers. And then we took a look at the research universities across the state and said, where are strengths? And who is strong in materials manufacturing? Who's strong in healthcare and performance? Who's strong in precision navigation and timing? Turns out OU is one of the top ones in the country, and none of us knew that. And then we created what's called centers of excellence around those domains and tried to bunch the universities. There's 13 research universities in the state, post-secondary. A lot of them had not connected. And we were fortunate enough in the last state budget to get money, funding for this. And so what we started off with is to do a competition amongst the universities for funding. But our focus was different. It wasn't on basic research, it was on applied research. And so as Denis was talking here about the TRL 2, 3, 4, 5 is really our focus. It's not the TRL 1, TRL 2. It's how do you take that research out of the universities and connect it with industry and the federal consumer who might be doing have a particular need. The other thing we did is we said, we're going to teach the universities how to go after these grants. So we basically followed a process that the federal government uses of writing white papers. After the white paper is evaluated, they do a full proposal and went through a complete independent review board of those activities and made selections. But what we found when we did round one, most of the folks were not adept at how to write those proposals across the whole state. And so we did in round two, which we just completed recently, we actually wrote the request for proposal, and then we trained them how to write against that RFP. And as a result, we got much better proposals in round two. But much like the Canadian model is, in fact, we have not met until this morning, but there's so many similarities to this program with the activities at JobsOhio is we're demanding that the lead university lead a project. They must partner with 2 other universities. They must also partner with industry. They must also have a federal partner. And if they don't get selected. We had an example in round one where we had 46 projects come in, and folks had just gone to Google and written down their government partner. Of course, we checked. We had government folks on the review team, and lo and behold, nobody knew these folks had submitted this proposal. So what we're trying to do too is to teach them how to interact across the universities and industry, but also how to interact and work with the federal sponsor. And we're about to launch something in the state, based, those of you in Ohio, the I-Corps program. We've actually created a OFRN I-Corps, and that I-Corps is actually being led by Camp at Ohio State. Is what we're doing is, and we've got 13 teams that have submitted submittals, is we're trying to teach them how to interface with industry, how to interface with the federal government, teach them how to do cold calls, how to basically go in and listen. And what our next push is, and this is where Jeff Rolf and Glenn Richardson beside me come in, is what we're trying to do is tie this into industry and connect it to industry and have industry-driven research for the future, as well as the federally sponsored research, because that's really where the jobs and the job creation are. Where it fits on this initiative, on the GR.E.A.T initiative, is we've been working with Lauren McGarity. We selected 19 projects for funding. We funded 11 of the 13 research universities across the state, all competitively. I think a lot of folks didn't think we would do it competitively, but we did. We have 56 companies involved in those projects, and what we're looking to do initially is see if some of those projects fit with the aerospace industry in Canada to where we might link them. One of the areas is energy storage, battery activities, precision navigation, and EAQ one too. So what we're trying to do is how do you get the universities to collaborate? Collaboration is essential. do you get them to work in industry, and how do you work with federal sponsors? And the byproduct of all this then is workforce, as they're working on relevant research for the federal sponsors and so forth. And we started with the federal government to get our requirements. Because generally, they have to be open, where industry tends to be a little more protective from a non-disclosure perspective. And so we started with the federal government, where we really want to go with Jeff's help and Glenn's help, is get better linkages with industry across the state of Ohio.
I think it's a theme, Denis, and you discovered this with your first round, and you're working probably uniquely on trying to fix this gap between, for those of you who, I think TRL has been used as a term, it's a technology readiness level for technology, in case you didn't know that. We tend at universities to work in 1 and 2. The world at large works at a level higher than that, something a little more sophisticated. That gap is really difficult to bridge, and I'd like to commend you for your efforts in doing that. OAI has a history in Ohio doing that as well. Evidently, CREAC is making an attempt at that. I really think that's key. That's really key. Our faculty think they know what you want. Right. I think that's a pretty good way of saying it. So Glenn, if we have a successful push towards talent development and placement in the aerospace sector, are we going to leave out other industries? Is it only going to benefit the aerospace industry? What's your opinion on that? You study these numbers constantly.
Well, thank you, Dean. First off, from an economic lens, it's really a pleasure to be here. I think this great initiative, if you think about what JobsOhio is all about, and our regional partners, I see Columbus 2020 here in the audience. You think about what we're all about is really reaching out to help businesses to grow. Businesses that are here today and businesses that we'd like to attract tomorrow. And so the opportunity to be able to increase our attributes in terms of our sales attributes for the state, and speaking to, I have great relationships here with OAI, with Jeff Rolf, and with OFRN, Denis and Marty, but be able to now extend that to say that we're collaborating with our partner across the border in a real way, and be able to demonstrate that just brings, it's a richer conversation. So I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you, Dr. Faubert, for being here as well, and for engaging with us on this. When we talk about aerospace, so the question, Dean, that you raised is, what we do for aerospace, does that trickle down? Well, I think if you look in, I haven't read anything recently on this, but a few years back I was reading about the impact of the NASA programs. And they looked at the dollars that the government spent in NASA, and then looked at what it generated in terms of GDP, and I think it was a 7-to-1 ratio. So the benefits that we get when we invest in technology, in advancing the state of technology, tends to percolate through the economy. And that's really very true when we think about aerospace. And just to kind of jump off of what you started in terms of some of the attributes of Ohio, certainly from an aerospace perspective, I like to say we invented the industry. The Wright brothers.
We all like to say that.
Yes. The Wright brothers, back in 1903, demonstrated heavier than air flight. All of the work that they did in developing the wing warping technology that allowed them to be successful, be the first ones in being successful in sustaining heavier than air flight. All that work occurred in a couple of bicycle shop buildings in Dayton, Ohio. And out of that not only came the beginnings of the industry, but it continued to grow here. And as a matter of fact, the genesis for GE Aviation being in Cincinnati was they started in one of the bicycle shop buildings of the Wright brothers. So they have a lineage right back to the birth of aviation that started in Dayton. And now, you know, we look and we've got great companies like Parker Hannifin and Eaton and nearly 600 aerospace companies in the state, employing on a private side, as you mentioned, nearly 40,000 people. We are the #1 state to Airbus, and Boeing, in large part due to GE Aviation being in Cincinnati, but also to my friend here, his work at Parker, which I'm sure they're missing at this point, but we're glad to have you at OAI. So I think it's a great state for aviation. Aviation's important because there's more dollars spent on what they call R&D intensity, percent of revenue, more dollars spent in aviation or aerospace than there is in other industries. So we get the benefit of that. And whether you're looking at advanced processes like additive manufacturing or advanced materials, advanced carbon fiber, carbon composites, ceramic matrix composites, etc., or automation. When we think of UAVs, aerial vehicles, or today, you know, we're talking about autonomous vehicles, autonomous cars. Columbus has recently awarded the Smart City initiative from the federal government. So Columbus will be piloting mobility, advanced mobility, and autonomous concepts right here in Columbus over the next 4 years. Be a great place. So there's now, with this high-tech world where everything is connected, you hear about it in terms like the industrial Internet of Things or Industry 4.0 if you're in Europe. When you look at what that means, it means that we're going to now have smart machines, we're going to have smart connected machines, we're going to have smart connected factories, we're going to have smart connected supply chains. Our phones will be connected to all elements of all aspects of our life, from our refrigerators to the locks in our cars. We'll be able to see the world through this little device in ways that we haven't seen it ever before. And that means that the technologies that we're developing in aerospace will just be that much more prevalent. Certainly software and sensors will be pervasive. They've started to be developed certainly in our advanced technology worlds in the defense environment, and those will be carried forward in many, many sectors. So I think aerospace is the right focus. I think it's a great relationship that we're developing here between Ohio and Montreal and CREAT and Canada. And I think that it will permeate in all of our industries, be it automotive, be it biomedical, be it IT, be it big data. All of those industries will benefit from this. When we look at it from a talent lens, because I think talent is really important, regardless of, I go out and I visit companies on 3 or 4 companies on a weekly basis, sometimes in the state of Ohio, sometimes out. And the conversation, no matter what, will always find its way to talent at one point or another. Sometimes it's the beginning of the conversation, sometimes it's later. But talent is absolutely key to businesses. And that talent is, I like that GED to PhD description, because, you know, when you think about what this technology is bringing, the factory worker of the past is now becoming a factory technician. They have to have much higher skills, whether it be in electronics, mechatronics, IT, etc. The skill levels are going up, and we need to provide a pathway for students coming out of our high schools, and a pathway for adults that are looking to transition out of their current job into something more. We need to find those pathways. I think we can learn from you. And then when you look at, businesses need to have new talent coming in with these new skills to help sustain their innovation. Innovation is critical to businesses, and especially in this, we just saw with Lauren's presentation, the paradigm shifts, the rate of change and the significant paradigm shifts that are coming at faster and faster rates. We have to have talent that's capable of adapting to those paradigm shifts and keeping our businesses relevant. So being able to share talent across borders, for our employees to have a broader experience, be it coming from another country and working here, or having some of our students go to foreign countries and experiencing that and bringing those experiences back. It's a smaller and smaller world out there, and we're the #1 supplier state today in aerospace. We need to continue to focus on innovation to be there. I think working with Montreal, with JobsOhio, with your institutions will do nothing but help us to maintain that position and grow it, and together will add a lot of value to both of our economies and to these great nations as well as the world.
Okay, thank you. I guess I can make one comment is when we're quoting our 40,000 direct employment numbers, that really doesn't include capture the entire supply chain either. I don't know if you know what that figure is.
Well, I think, we've talked about it. It's sometimes hard to measure. It might be in the order of 100,000 over, when you put in the federal employees as well as all of the state education and
I mean, I visit companies not as often as you do, thank goodness. But I go to very small companies and they're manufacturing a particular kind of fastener, and that's all they do. How to capture that is very difficult to do. So I'm guessing it's a much larger number.
That 40,000, we try to be very careful with numbers. JobsOhio, we always cite a source. Whenever we're citing numbers in terms of employment, we do it via NAICS. And Dean, you're spot on. There's another factor here in that a company may report itself in an automotive space or in the general manufacturing space, but they're actually providing those products into the aerospace industry as well. So we can't judge all of that. So we make it kind of paint with a broad brush, but we cite numbers that are specific to what's reported.
I've seen your numbers. I mean, you really cleaned it up well. So. We have about 10 minutes left, and I would like to, at this point, open up the floor for questions from the audience. Kevin, could you state your name also and your role?
Sure. I'm Kevin King, I'm the Director of Industry Partnerships for Ohio University. My question is, I think the panel made a really good argument for why aerospace is the place to start. I'm curious because when I think of aerospace, I think of the large companies, all of which you mentioned, GE, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, and Dean Irwin just on the tail end there mentioned a small company. So I'm curious what you think the role of, the level of engagement of small companies in this industry is, and then how can we help small companies benefit from the great initiative of either bringing talent across the borders to the small companies as well as the large corporations.
Who would like to field that? I'm thinking Glenn in Ohio, but I don't know about
happy to jump in on
Quebec.
that. I'll get it started. I think there's other opportunities here. So, first off, I would say, kind of in a simplistic way, that whether you're a small company or a large company, you have a need for talent. And I can tell you that that's true because we serve, very small companies all the way up to very large ones. I think the great initiative allows for us to expand, the talent pool that's available. And it's just like, Denis was talking about the OFRN. They've got 56 companies now engaged with that public-private work. And I'm sure if we go and look at those 56 companies, we're going to find some are small in nature, 28 of them. So the the size does not limit the opportunity in this case. I think we will, if you look at the way we operate, I speak for OAI as well, we don't, we like to include small, medium, and large companies because we feel that innovation happens across that spectrum. Sometimes the smaller ones are actually more agile than the larger ones. So including them makes good sense. And so we're trying to provide easy avenues and connectivity for all of the companies across the space.
Denis, how does that work in Quebec?
It's about the same. If you look at our membership, I would say that almost half of it, I think we're about 125 across Canada. So it would be something like about 60, 65. And the fact of the matter is that there are not that many OEMs. I mean, numbers. In Canada, we are 5 or 6 altogether. And the very other important point is that the more it goes, the more the OEMs are pushing down the requirement for innovation. That's very important to understand. Now they see themselves much more as integrators of innovative products. So they're not necessarily pushing that down to the tier 4, but certainly the tier 1s that are expected to be much more innovative and carry a larger burden. And I think it goes down all the chain. The difficulty, and we try to pay special attention to SMEs in our program. Again, coming back, I don't know if you're getting mixed up with what I said here earlier, but it's okay. It's not age, or maybe it is. Prior to C.R.E.A.T, the federal network that is 2-year-old, we did not have funding to fund companies, including SMEs. So all the funding was going to university. That's very good. But again, the tech transfer is not finished until it crossed the frontier. So in the old days, the SMEs were involved in the project, but playing very much, they were very much on the side. Now, because we can give money to them, now they are actively engaged. And in fact, we have at the moment, out of the 40 projects on the C.R.E.A.T that we have approved in the last 2 years, we have about 10% that are SME-led. The SMEs are on the driver's seat, and a couple actually involve the OEMs. The OEMs are following and helping them along the way, that is wonderful, but they're not in the driver's seat. And so yes, we all have the same dynamics. In our country, we find that we do not have enough tier 1 companies. So if we want to build the SMEs and move them up the chain, we all have the chain. It's difficult, but I think in programs like the one that Québec has said, at least it gives them a tool to prove themselves. It's very nice. These guys are always running after money and left and right. So when you give them a good pile of cash to say, okay, now prove yourself, and up to tier 6 level. So it's not ballooning when they meet tier 2, tier 3. So we're paying a lot of attention to that. It's a challenge.
Jeff, did you have something to add?
Yeah, as kind of a very specific example came to mind, how the requirement for connection. And I heard Glenn talk about smart connected devices, and that's all about increasing efficiency. And I wrote down a quick comment here: smart connected people. We had the opportunity to work with the industry to put a fuel cell on a commercial aircraft. And in order to do that, we reached out to NASA for how they had done it at in space. We reached out to the universities because they had done some technology for hydrogen sensing, and they reached out to the researchers and small companies to create that hydrogen sensing. So very specifically, how the universities were able to help is to find a way to be connected all the way upstream to the people that needed something very innovative in the space, to have the intelligence and development. They had a funded opportunity on that hydrogen sensing device, which was used in the fuel cell that was helped. We got some help from NASA and funded by organizations sitting at this table. So again, it was all about kind of smart connected people. And to quote NASA, on the front of the building it says research for the benefit of all. And I think when we increase that synergy across kinds of institutions, across borders, across industry and profits and nonprofits, I think my message is become part of the group. Look upstream, look downstream, just the efficiency of the whole process.
Yeah, you're not gonna be the big winner on anything you do, on everything that you do, but you have to try things and learn, and it's an incremental process. So, we have time for one more question. LJ?
Good morning. My name is Marquis and I'm from Ohio University. I'm a colleague qui vient de Québec. C'est un échange jésuite que nous sommes accueillis à Ohio. C'est un endroit très chaleureux. Alors, you said research collaborators. To what extent are you thinking about how we do research collaborators and link it to our industry, create pipeline, not just industry working with industry, but our talent, our young talent, working with you in Quebec or in Canada, in St. Ohio. For us, that is one of the critical questions today. On behalf of everybody, we really welcome some of your insights and how you bring the two of us together.
I had a discussion early this morning with Eric about some partnerships that they have with Europe. And I'm thinking about some of the barriers, the work permit barriers and other things. So, Eric, how do you work through all that? Obviously, we have a different system than the European Union, but at the same time, if we need to work on it, we need to start.
Yeah, well, I think in that respect, that's where definitely to discuss the innovation of issues, the innovation issue, and the least qualified person on the panel to discuss them. But where we come in is really as a facilitator, and how sometimes to develop arrangements that will lead the innovators and the companies to work together and sometimes identify opportunities. And so that's why, for instance, the agreements between NOIA and OAI and JAC are, I mean, we work with that in really close partnership with the federal government. This is really an area where JAC and Ottawa are really working very closely. But sometimes there are linked issues that and this is what we'll try to do with the projected agreement that we're negotiating with Ohio in the area of student mobility, talent development. But some of the things that we've done in Europe, for instance, is we've clearly had a historical partnership with France and we have negotiated a series of agreements of mutual recognition of qualifications to favor labor mobility across, so that when people can work either on a short, mid-term, or long-term basis in a project that is transnational, you don't have to jump over a bunch of hurdles by professional corporations and others. There's a whole range of professions from bakers to doctors, really in that chain of in these alliterations, but really how to develop this framework that can, and we've worked it first with France, now we're trying to apply it with other countries in the European Union. I think if we do that with I mentioned earlier, we export more to Ohio than we export to Europe.
We'd like to keep that going.
You know, well, and so do we, and we like to import a lot from Ohio as well. But so I think it would behoove us if we would bring this kind of framework, this facilitating framework, and try to see how it can apply to a more North American business and innovation relationship model. And those are the kind of steps that we take in terms of what we do in terms of developing the manpower training system. That's from GEDs to PhDs, but also these frameworks that will favor cross-jurisdictional mobility, whether it's for students, whether it's for researchers, or innovators. And that's where we're really playing that table setting role.
So I think I had an agreement with the European Union. My piece, though, was there were 4 collaborators sponsored by the Department of Education. And then there were 4 partners in Europe, sponsored by their equivalent in the EU.
Yeah.
I think it's since changed names. The problem that we had was the students could flow pretty easily, the money couldn't flow at all. And, you know, I think that was a significant barrier to making our effort, which was successful as long as we had money on both sides and it was all balanced and everything. But I think the real success would be to include in those negotiations the fact that, you know, yeah, I can't spend money on a French student or a student from Quebec if that student is someone that I want, right, working in my company. Maybe not forever, but.
And I think it really helps if you have jurisdictions that have already a history of trading and collaborating together. Sometimes you're going to sign a cooperative agreement. We do a lot of those, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's the same people that go that go to the same place every year for a long time. And that's a model we try to avoid. It's really clearly if there's a history of trade, if there's a history of really working on projects together, key stakeholders, and we've done that in terms of things being funded both ways. We have a series of cooperative agreements. One of them that's really interesting in the area of innovation is what we've done with Faubert. This is a really key partner, and as you know, an important player in the business and innovation ecosystem in Germany. So that's you just identify the right partners, see where there's a sector that there. Couple of sectors where there's a match, and then we try to create frameworks that can facilitate things, and we always try to stay the heck out of the way.
It is down, when it comes right down to it, it is fundamentally people working together. So we've been told we have a little bit of extra time, I think.
Yeah, so if I could add a little bit.
Go ahead. I want to make sure we get another audience question. All right.
I'm Dr. Noreen Larson. I'm the president of Edison State Community College here in Ohio, and I heard you mention the GED and a PhD, and so we are the sector that provides the technicians and the technical training. We've gotten into a lot of workforce development. We've done some apprenticeship, looking at apprenticeship opportunities. So really, just I guess reminding that sector is here and that we certainly can play a part in that pipeline of what we're trying to do internationally. We're more known for international agreements, say we're going back to China and stuff, than I think I don't think we've had any intersection yet with the community policies.
Well, I think just to pick up on this, it is something in our discussions with Ohio. This is a sector that is very much considered, and I think we've had this entity called Consortium in Quebec that does. And clearly, there's always the lure of faraway places. Sometimes that can lead to agreements, but I mean, the ties, business and innovation are extremely strong on both sides of the border, and there's really great opportunities and low-hanging fruit that we could really capitalize on. And I think that's what those are some of the things we were trying to do. Once we land that plane of the agreement with Ohio, which should be within 2 months.
With your high school model, the college model, that is not something that's impossible in Ohio. It's not the way we're set up by default. But as I understand it, it's not really impossible. So I think we're going to have some discussions about that and how that works, because we have a real gap in workforce development. We may have it everywhere, but in terms of those technicians that somebody was talking about that are now going to be out on the shop floor, we have a hard time with that. So, Dennis, you wanted to follow up on this?
Yeah, I'd like to actually tie the 3 questions together. My focus has been on the research institutions. The Marine Community College actually is our lead for workforce development across the 2-year institutions across the state too. But what we're trying to do, to come back to the first question, is rather than focus on the OEMs or these university research projects right now, 20 even the 56 projects are small businesses, is we're really going after the small to medium businesses. And what we did is we actually mined the databases around the country of all the businesses in the state of Ohio, given the NAICS codes and DUNS codes and everything else that are out there, for the 6 centers of excellence that we've set up to find all the businesses in the state that actually are doing work over here. So it's precision navigation and timing, where are they in the state of Ohio? Because a lot of times you got the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, you never know about the tier 3. We're not saying we got 100%, but we've got a good database to work from across the businesses across the state now to start partnering the research universities with those small businesses. But what we're also trying to do is how do you then connect those small businesses to big businesses, but then also those small businesses are suppliers in Canada, is how do you take that and move it into Canada? So there's a way to possibly, through the lower tier providers, connect it back into Canada also. But our real focus is right now, and Joe's charged with this to some extent, is how do we get the small and medium businesses? Because we think that's where the innovation's taking place. We think that's where the new jobs are going to come from. And that's really a hard drive that we're pushing in this juncture. And those are the folks that need positions filled. I mean, my wife happens to work for a manufacturing company, and they can't find the folks with the right education, drug-free, to run the CNC machines. It's a big challenge.
Well, everybody needs to realize, I think it is a hard problem, and it's not one that we can get together and talk about 2 or 3 times a year. We've got to really be working on it all the time. Yes.
I'm Brenda Pesto with Communication Specialties. We are a small business, so how do we find you?
Give me my card.
I actually, if I were a small business, knowing what I know, and if I were responsible, especially for human resources in a small business, the first person I would call in this sector would be Glenn. So, sorry, Glenn, I volunteered you for a lot more.
So, wait, the FRN has a website, OhioFRN.org. If you want to look at this one.
I got a few things. First, on the international question, we described it. It's difficult to have the money flow across the borders. That's correct. But within these constraints, we have already some international projects going. So essentially, it's like to explain. You have to work, and I think we found the proper channel this morning between Ohio and ourselves. First, people must be funded. And normally, Kennedy is the same. It's the first thing. You have to have a. And then you have to understand the process for selecting projects. You have to align them somehow. But we just approved 4 projects with Hamburg this Monday on our scientific committee. And then first we meet, try to understand what are the priorities, what are their strengths, what are our strengths. They search them their country for the expertise. We do the same. We assemble a team on our side, the team on their side. They pay their expenses, we pay our expenses, and we put it all together. And it's not as simple. Research Without Borders is a bit of a dream. Huh? It's not as simple as, of course, dealing with your next door neighbor, but it's not that complicated if you understand the process. And we have documented one process step by step to make sure that we meet all, in terms of process, we meet all our gates, they meet all their gates. So it is feasible. For the colleges, I mean, I don't know if it's not right, the community college, I don't know if you're aware, in Quebec, and now it's being generalized across Canada, these institutions have started some small research centers. And that was a genius move from their part. It's not as deep science, basic science, fundamental science as universities. It's a little higher up, but the link they have with SMEs is tremendous. Usually, it's not necessarily their professors who are manning these centers. They are professionals, but they're working on site, so they have access to all the equipment there, and all the professors, if they're stuck in some kind of thing, and they're not paying on publications. Right? That's an issue with universities. These people are are promoted on publications, not necessarily what they do for the industrial base. So to be honest, if you want to, we'll connect you if you want. You should take a look at that model. I missed it myself. I just, one day I woke up and I discovered all these, there are 50 some odds in Quebec already. And 50.
That's, you're talking about the technology transfer centers, yeah?
Well, yeah.
47 or something?
It's not close to 50 roughly. And the same system is now being in Canada. And the national research, the federal institution funding research in universities does have now special program to fund these people as well. So they're becoming part of the system, and frankly, the person who talked about that, it was a great move.
I'm very sorry, but we have finally run out of time. We got a bit of a reprieve there because lunch was late, but I would imagine it's here, and we've been told to wrap it up. But this has been great. A successful panel is one that creates questions. So thank you very much.